Welcome back, everybody. We're back for the fourth episode of the Ham and Turkey. Very excited to do this topic today. This topic been on my mind for I'd say a good year and a half, and I had to take a hiatus to get my equipment together. But now that I'm together, I can do this topic the way I want to. Hopefully, this will be the last segment where I'm talking by myself. I need to have more guests on there to make this podcast way more interesting, to get the potential out of it I think that I can have. But I really need to discuss Colin Kaepernick. I really need to get what I need to say out, because people are not, even 3 years later, 3 years removed from all the stuff that happened, and kneeling and what have you, people are still not looking at it from not looking at it in the proper scope. They're not thinking about the football aspect and then the societal and the cultural aspect. So today I'm going to address the football aspect, and I'm going to address the societal and the cultural aspect, so we can bring both perspectives into one, and you can have a better view and a better outlook on the whole kneeling and Kaepernick situation from the NFL's perspective and from our perspective as the culture. So I want to explore how we got to the kneeling point. We'll start when Kaepernick got drafted. Kaepernick was drafted by the Niners in the second round. The Niners traded up to get him. They drafted him out of Nevada, where Colin Kaepernick was considered a dual threat quarterback, which means that Colin Kaepernick was able to also use his legs, and he was also able to throw, or perceived to throw. So the Niners took him, and he backed up Alex Smith. First season, he did not throw any passes. Only attempted 5 passes, Second season, he was used very sparingly. He was only able to run certain plays. However, this is that year that Alex Smith had got hurt. Alex Smith had a concussion. And after that concussion, Kaepernick came in. He was the starter for the rest of the year. And the Niners actually made it to the Super Bowl, which is a very, very, very high accomplishment. And so after that, they lost to the Ravens. And the next year, in 2013, they had made it back to the NFC Championship game. And then that year, actually, the Niners went 12-4. And they played the Seattle Seahawks, and they lost. And that was the year the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl and won. And so in 2014, Kaepernick actually got a nice contract. He got a $126 million contract, and it was 53 of it was incentives, and then 13 of it was guaranteed. So to give you a little context of what that means, because this will come into when I talk about the teams that are trying to sign Kaepernick. Kaepernick got a contract that was team friendly, and what team friendly means is that the team would not lose a lot of money if he did not pan out. So that's why the guaranteed money was not as high. It's only $13 million out of a $125 million contract, and then the rest he had to earn based on his play. So he would have to either be like an all-pro, make the Pro Bowl a couple years, and basically they just signed him to a wait-and-see type of contract. Because he did have a good year, but it wasn't the type of year that would make you give him a bunch of guaranteed money up front. And so that's a part that I want to dive into for the listeners who say, well, Kaepernick did this and Kaepernick did that. I'm going to give you a little context just to frame this for you. When you are a running quarterback, it is very rare that you get a running quarterback who can run and also is an accurate thrower of the football. Well, you say, well, he's in the NFL. Doesn't that mean that he can throw the football accurately? No, that does not mean that. Because in the NFL, everyone is good. Everyone is top at whatever they are. Everyone is fast. Everyone is smart. Even the third guy on the bench is some type of high D1 athlete. So you have to take your game to another level. So, Kaepernick's career completion percentage is only 59.8. So to be a great NFL quarterback, to be an elite quarterback such as Drew Brees, we'll use him as an example, you have to be completing at least 65% of your passes. That is the mark that will make you a consistent and great elite quarterback. To give you more context, Drew Brees this season just broke his own completion percentage record. His completion percentage record was 74. He broke it this year, and he completed 77% of his passes. So you got Kaepernick, that's at 59.8. You have Drew Brees, that's at 77.6. So that's to give you some type of context of the middle area or gray area that Kaepernick should be. So Drew is the height, and Kaepernick's at the lowest end of that spectrum. He has backup quarterback type completion percentage. So that's to give you a little context. So let's switch to the 2015 season. The 2015 season, Kaepernick struggled under their new coach, Jim Tomsula. And after that year, their coach, Tim Tomsula, was fired, and they hired Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly is a coach who was just coming from Philly, and he was coming, and from before Philly, he was in the college ranks. He was at Oregon. He coached the Oregon Ducks, and they ran pretty much the same offense that Kaepernick ran at Nevada. They run a high tempo read option offense. For my non-savvy listeners, I would love to educate you guys. The read option offense gives the quarterback pretty much at the beginning of every play to either hand it off to the running back to run or to use the quarterback's legs to run, which is Kaepernick excels at, which is how he was able to do what he did, those first couple seasons. He uses his legs and he makes some throws to get them down the field. And having your quarterback run is a super dimension to have for any team. So they thought that Chip Kelly would be able to recreate what Jim Harbaugh had with Kaepernick the first time. So Chip Kelly comes in, and they bring in Blaine Gabbert. Blaine Gabbert is probably one of the worst quarterbacks to come out in the last 5 or 6 years, and is pretty much a career backup. So him and Kaepernick have an open competition for the starting spot for the Niners, and Kaepernick loses this competition. Now, the first preseason game that they had that year, Kaepernick decides that he's going to sit for the national anthem. So after the game, they asked him, they said, well, Cap, why did you sit during the national anthem? He told them, he said that I cannot support a symbol that oppresses my people in terms of social injustice and police brutality. So after that conversation, and after that, there was a media storm around it. That was all every show was talking about. Colin Kaepernick sitting during the national anthem. So a former NFL player who was also a military veteran reached out to him and said that they loved his stance. However, it could be perceived as disrespectful to people of the military. So Colin Kaepernick wanted to accommodate those people. And he said, how could I do that? So he told him that he should kneel instead of sitting down. And just a sidebar for all you guys, Marshawn Lynch, running back, very beloved running back. He used to play for the Seattle Seahawks and the Oakland Raiders. He had been sitting during the national anthem his whole career. From the time he was in Buffalo, even to the time he was a Raider, he had been sitting for the national anthem, and no one said a word. So I still to this day trying to understand what made Kaepernick sitting so much of a hoopla. But anyway, so that happened, and he started kneeling. And so after he started kneeling, a lot of his teammates started kneeling, and it became a thing around the league that we are going to start kneeling for social injustice. And if you remember that year, President Trump called a lot of the players who were kneeling sons of bees. And that's what raised all the arms. And that's when this thing kind of like took a life of its own, because you had literally players across the league kneeling. And they weren't even kneeling for social injustice at that point. They were just kneeling to try to mess with Trump, because everyone hates Trump. So they were just kneeling to try to get back at Trump. And so after that 2016 year, Colin Kaepernick, he opted out of his contract, and he tried to restructure his contract, and that made him a free agent. And so that is the part where we're going to discuss the misnomers and the misconceptions and the misfacts that people have about this whole situation. That people have about this whole Neela situation that people really aren't understanding or aren't getting or not choosing to see. So with the next segment, we're going to discuss the teams that wanted to sign Kaepernick and how I felt about his kneel and the misconceptions that people are still having after 3 years of this story. Now we reach the portion in our segment where I address the misconception and the misinformation that people have been given, saying that Colin Kaepernick was not trying to be signed because he started kneeling. And again, as I stated before, I feel like I hear this statement quite often when I ask people why they don't watch the NFL anymore. And so this whole conversation got started when I was at work, and this young lady said, I asked her, I said, do you watch football? She said, I used to. I said, you used to? I said, why don't you anymore? She said, I just don't agree with the whole Colin Kaepernick not being signed because he kneeled thing. I said, oh, okay. And I know she didn't really know anything about football, so I didn't progress the conversation. However, I decided to address that thesis in my podcast right now. I'm gonna let you know that this whole notion that Kaepernick wasn't trying to be signed while he was kneeling, and after he got cut by the Niners, that's total BS. And I'm gonna tell you why. There were approximately 4 teams who inquired about Kaepernick, and specifically 3 teams that were seriously ready to sign him. These were the teams. The Broncos, first and foremost. After the Super Bowl that Peyton Manning won, his last Super Bowl against the Panthers, after that Super Bowl, he retired, and the Broncos were desperately looking for a quarterback. They were going to trade for Kaepernick. However, Kaepernick did not want to restructure his deal. Therefore, since he did not want to restructure his deal and take a pay cut, he did not want to play, and he would not accept the terms of that trade. So they did not sign Kaepernick because he did not want to leave any money on the table. The second team was the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens also wanted to sign Kaepernick. If you remember, at that time, Ray Lewis was one of Colin Kaepernick's confidants, and Ray Lewis constantly talked to Colin Kaepernick about, did he still want to play football? His whole outlook now that he was cut, now that he was kind of moving into the social activism realm. Where was his head at? And Ray Lewis was one of the people that was constantly talking to him. So in that, Ray Lewis talked to the owner of the Ravens, Steve Bisciotti, and what happened was Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend actually tweeted out a racist photo of Ray Lewis and Steve Bisciotti, and Ray Lewis was depicted having Django's head, and Steve Bisciotti was another character out of Django. I can't remember at this moment, but they were both depicted as characters from Django. So that racist photo definitely, took Colin out of their plans because you can't disrespect the person that's trying to sign you. And Ray Lewis was the person that was advocating for him to be signed, and his girlfriend disrespected him. So he lost out on that opportunity. The third team that tried to sign him was the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks were looking for a backup quarterback, and they also inquired and was seriously getting ready to sign Kaepernick. However, Kaepernick could not assure them that he would stop kneeling. Therefore, they did not elect to sign him. And so, in the societal and cultural aspect of my next segment, I will discuss that aspect of why Colin didn't stop kneeling so he can get on the team. And that is the part, and that is the whole thing of this that I can't really respect about Colin Kaepernick. But we'll move towards the fourth team. The fourth team that tried to sign him was the Washington Redskins. Now, they didn't really try to sign him. They more inquired about him. They inquired about him because they had lost their starting quarterback, Alex Smith, to a broken leg. And then they lost their backup quarterback, Colt McCoy, also. And so they needed a quarterback. So they discussed it, and they opted not to sign Kaepernick. And they went with Josh Johnson and Mark Sanchez. In that, there is a young lady by the name of Josina Anderson. She works for ESPN. She is an NFL insider, and she's one of the biggest proponents and speaker boxes for Colin Kaepernick being signed by a team. I follow her on IG, and she did an IG Live one day where she stated that the Redskins run the same exact plays that Colin Kaepernick ran in college. Also, she made a point that Colin Kaepernick is better than Josh Johnson and Mark Sanchez, which is true. And thirdly, when the more important point, and the point that I want all my listeners to take away from this, is that she says that the media circus that would be coming around this story will eventually blow over. And so that's the point right there. When you decide to sign Kaepernick, or if you decide to sign Kaepernick, if you were an owner, you willingly take on a media circus. So what that means is that not only will his signing be on FS1, it will be on ESPN, it will be on ABC, it will be on MSNBC, it will be on Fox News, any major media outlet. It will be breaking news. We will see it on every single channel. And so this is the point. The point is that when you're a football team and you're trying to win football games, it is hard enough mentally processing the job that football players have to do week in and week out to be at the top level of their game. The last thing that football players want to worry about is answering questions about Colin Kaepernick, social injustice, police brutality, and race in America. Not that those issues are not important. It's just that they have a job to do. They have families to feed. And to do that efficiently and effectively, they need a clear focus, because 90% of football is a mental game. It's how well you can process information and how quickly you can react to processing that information on the field. Trust me, I know this. So, therefore, you cannot do that job effectively if you every day, because that's what happens. Every day, media will be at their doors asking them questions about Kaepernick. What was he doing? What was he talking about? How was he in the locker room? You will have 500 questions in a week about Kaepernick and what he's doing. And you will have no questions or minimal questions about football. And so NFL teams, they want NFL coaches, they want the least amount of distractions as humanly possible. So again, just to reiterate another point, these teams, the Redskins, the Seahawks, the Broncos, these are all corporations. These are all organizations. They refer to them as organizations, and they're ran like businesses. And they have to be conscious of the brands that they put out, right? So if you sign a quarterback that is pretty much a backup, has backup numbers, and plays like a backup, there should be no reason why the backup quarterback should ever have as much clout as the star player or the quarterback, the starting quarterback. And that's what will happen. So as an organization and as a business that's trying to win football games, because that's their main focus, they have to do what's in the best interest of their team. So all you people out there that constantly keep on saying that, first and foremost, Kaepernick was not trying to be signed by your teams, that's false. And secondly, all you guys saying, well, people need to give him a shot and these white owners need to conform and all this stuff that y'all keep saying, y'all need to sit and think about everything in the scope that it's in from a football perspective. So I'm only just addressing football right now. You know, you want the least amount of distractions as you can possibly have for your players to focus on their jobs. The NFL owners' main concern is not the black community's social movement about social injustice and police brutality. Now, again, like I said before, should they put more onus on it? Absolutely. Absolutely they should, because 73% of the league is black. And it would behoove them to try to appease the majority as much as possible. However, they must protect and look out for the best interests of their brand and their organization. And no owner, especially no white owner, does not want to be put in a social box where they have to make a decision about social injustice and say, hey, I take this stand, or hey, I don't take this stand. And now we're in an awkward position, and now they lose ticket sales, they lose fans, they lose media coverage, they lose all that stuff just by signing a player. And so that's why, to most teams, Kaepernick probably isn't worth it. That's why a team will elect to go with a Blaine Gabbert or elect to go with the Tom Savage, because they'll have to deal with a lot less. And I fault no owner, and I fault no GM, and I fault no scouts, I fault no coaches for wanting to make the best decision for their football team. So again, to my listeners, I want you to be cognizant of the football aspect of this. And when you discuss this with other people, please, I am imploring you to think about this aspect logically. Do not think about it from a subjective point of view, from a knee-jerk point of view, from an emotional point of view, because you love Kaepernick and because he took a kneel, that automatically makes him deserve a spot in the league. Now, am I saying that Kaepernick can't play? No, I'm not saying that Kaepernick can't play, because Kaepernick can play. And honestly, he probably should start on the Jaguars. That's the only team I can justify him starting on, because Blake Bortles is garbage. However, Blake Bortles didn't take a super scrutinized stand on social injustice and kneel for the national anthem. So that's why we'll give him the money and we'll stick with him instead of signing Kaepernick. So now that you guys have heard the football aspect, we're going to move into the more controversial and the more thought-provoking societal and cultural segment that I want you guys to sit and think about also. And really ask yourself, is what I'm saying very valid? And is there any veracity to what I'm saying? Now we reach the portion in the segment where I talk about something thought-provoking and unpopular. So now I'm going to look at Colin Kaepernick kneeling from a societal and from a culture perspective. When I say societal and culture perspective, I'm saying it from what impact it's had on our culture, what impact it's had on our society, and how that has influenced our thoughts about Colin Kaepernick and the outlandish things that Colin Kaepernick has been doing or has done, in my opinion. So, I first off want to discuss his kneeling specifically. Now, what I want to say about it is, I want to start by saying I probably wouldn't have kneeled. Just because, and I say this to everyone who asks me about it, just because I know that I probably could never do what our military veterans do on a day-to-day basis. I know I could not do that. And I would never, ever want to disrespect what they do, and I would never want what I'm trying to say come across as disrespectful to them, seeing as the fact that they sacrifice for our country every day, regardless of how you feel about America and regardless of what you feel about the flag and what's going on in our country. I personally feel like you should respect the military and what they do regardless of the fact. So when Dak Prescott, when they asked him about it, and he said, I always stand for the national anthem, I always put my hand over my heart, I agree, and I do the same thing every single time. Because the sacrifices that they make for us, I know I could not do. And I was hesitant to say anything about him kneeling because, again, as I stated in the beginning, I respected him highly for kneeling. Because, like I said, it took an extreme amount of intestinal fortitude to do what he did and to take the stand that he did. So I looked at myself and I said, who am I to critique or even offer an opinion on something that I probably couldn't do my own self? But that's why I have a podcast, to express my thoughts and my opinions on things such as this. So, when Colin kneeled, it did. I feel like it did something to our society and to the culture. First of all, I feel like it gave Colin a title that he was not ready for and that he did not fully think about. And also, I feel like we as a culture gave him a responsibility that I personally don't really feel like he deserved. And this is why. So, first of all, after he kneeled and he got cut, and you guys were saying that he should be signed, and no teams were trying to sign him, and then the players in the NFL who wanted to keep his legacy going kept kneeling. That's why I said at the beginning, I feel like his point had got across. I feel like people were more aware of the police brutality and the social injustice that we as a community were facing and are still facing to this day. I feel like his point had got across. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that the issue is over with, because it's not over with. We still are oppressed to this day. However, I feel like his whole social movement at the time, I feel like it made the impact that it wanted. It got people more aware. The owner of the Detroit Lions, Miss Martha Ford, she donated to player-specific charities, and the conditions was that they would stop kneeling. Like I reiterated before, teams have to look out for their brand, but I can respect that if you donate to a cause that is going to rid social injustice out of our community or try to help kids who have been victims by it. I can respect if you try to do something about it. And I feel like there were owners who were willing to at least help out with the issue. Now, are they going to give the give the issue the sensitivity that it needs? Probably not. But is it better than nothing? Absolutely. Absolutely is better than nothing. And also, just to discuss the social activism part. Colin stepped into a realm that I don't think he was quite ready for. The realm of making a choice to be a football player or a social activist. And at the beginning, he was struggling with it because Shannon Sharp on Undisputed was also one of his confidants and was also talking to him. And he stated that he didn't know if Colin still even wanted to play football anymore, if he should just be done with it altogether, because he didn't want to feel like he was begging for a job, you know. And so I told someone yesterday, I said, Colin is going to have to make a choice. He's going to have to make a choice between if he wants to be a social activist or if he wants to be a football player, because the two ideas cannot coexist. We do not live in the 1960s and the 1950s when Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Jim Brown and all of them were being more oppressed than we are today, and they were taking stands because they had to. You know what I mean? Like, they paved the way for people like Colin Kaepernick to kneel because they took the lumps and the bruises for us and for our today's athletes to do what they do. However, Colin Kaepernick, he is not ready for that, you know, and I don't think he is that. But I think his stance now, I think it may be just a tad bit disingenuous. And that's the controversial aspect that I want to discuss specifically. You asked me, why do I think it's disingenuous? I think it's disingenuous because, first of all, after he stopped kneeling, after he got cut and after he was no longer in the league anymore, he was not heard from for about a year. You know, after they discussed all the teams that were trying to sign him, after he actually sued, he is currently suing the NFL owners for collusion, for saying that they're trying to collectively keep him out the league. But again, he reiterated that he didn't want to beg them for jobs. So those two ideas are kind of conflicting, because you just sued them all for collusion, but you want a job from them. So I don't understand that, and I would like to understand that, but that's only something Colin can answer. And honestly, I don't have Colin here, so I can't ask him that question. Anyways, after he stopped kneeling, he was not heard from. And then out of nowhere, we get a Nike commercial. The Nike commercial gives me chills every time I watch it. I get goosebumps when I watch the commercial because it's so powerful. You know what I mean? And it's so monumental because I can just relate to it, you know. Just do something that nobody's telling you that you can do. And I try to embody that as much as I possibly can. And I'm pretty sure anybody that has any type of story can, you know, relate to that Nike ad. And I respect the heck out of Nike, because Nike capitalized off of if you want to be honest, they capitalized off of our struggle and off of Kaepernick's struggle, and their stocks capped out at the highest that it ever had in Nike's history. And Nike pretty much got every 13 to 19-year-old to go out and buy Nikes because they want to be like Colin Kaepernick now. And that'll bring me to my last point, and I will discuss that lastly. But Nike got all the teenagers to go out and buy Nike. After that ad, they generated another 163 million in revenue in sales. That's crazy. It's an excess 163. So it's just I see him monetizing the struggle. And so that's why I'm saying that the disingenuousness and then the legitimacy is in question to me. Because also there's another report that Kaepernick got the money he made off that deal was comparable to a top level athlete. And so LeBron James is the top. Well, it's either LeBron or Jordan. They're like even right now, but LeBron just signed $1 billion contract with Nike, a lifetime contract with Nike, which pushes him to being a billionaire. Jordan has a lifetime contract with Nike that pushes him to be a billionaire. Serena Williams has a $50 million contract with Nike. So they're saying, in all the reports that I read, is that Colin Kaepernick got somewhere around that figure, more of the Serena figure, more of the $50 million range. They said it's millions of dollars per year. That's how much money he's going to get from that Nike ad. So he got that Nike bag, and now me personally, I feel like he should put his actions where his kneeling is and do something to help our community. So he did something. He pledged to donate $1 million to 10 different charities, so that'll be $100,000 per charity, and he would do that throughout the whole last year of 2018. So I went and did some research, and so Colin Kaepernick made his last donation on January the 28th. And the Nike commercial came out September the 5th, a Wednesday. So from January the 28th to September 5th, there was nothing heard from Colin Kaepernick, and there was no donations made. There was no activism. There was nothing done at all. So now from September 5th to today being January the 29th, if I'm not mistaken, that's when I'm recording this, on the 29th. From this day and now, he has not made any donations anymore to any more charities. He hasn't done any social activism. He hasn't said a word about social injustice or police brutality or anything else like that. So again, my question is, what have you been doing, or what are you doing? You took a stand. You want to help our community. What are you doing now? You got your bag. You got your money. So now what are you going to do? What are you going to do for our community now? So I really inquired. I wanted to know what he was going to do. So I looked it up. So this is a report from the New York Times. This is per New York Times. Colin Kaepernick has, I think, 5 book deals coming out. He's going on a speaking tour. And also, he's producing and going to start a comedy show. Now, I don't know about y'all, but none of those things, besides the speaking tour and the book, but it sounds to me like he is trying to monetize and profit off of the struggle that we are currently facing with social injustice and police brutality and racism in America. That's just me. Now, you guys have gone on and made him the next Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, but you guys aren't sitting and looking at what's going on here. Please don't blame Nike for what happened. Nike is in the business of getting people like us to buy their shoes and buy their apparel, and they use Colin Kaepernick to do it, to get all your kids, all your nieces and your nephews, all these basketball players to buy Nikes. And they're a business, and that's what they do. However, Colin was the one that took the stand, the kneel in this instance, and he's the one who wanted to stand up and wanted to be the voice for us now. So again, ask yourself, what is he doing to help our struggle at this very moment in time? I just told you what it is. You can go read the article for yourself. It's like the 4th article when you Google. Per New York Times, they say he has a book. He has six book deals. He's going on a speaking tour, and he's starting a comedy show. They did not specify if that's a social injustice speaking tour or a black activism speaking tour or a book or anything like that. So I want y'all to sit and think about what is he really trying to do, and what he really is trying to get across to us. Like, what is he saying? What's the message that he's saying to us? And lastly, in the whole issue, this is where this whole Colin Kaepernick podcast stems from. This is where I had got pissed off, because I'm like, who is Colin Kaepernick to be telling people what they can and can't do? So I think it was either last week or the week before, Colin Kaepernick and Travis Scott. Travis Scott is going to do the halftime show at the Super Bowl. Jay-Z tried to talk Travis out of doing it. Travis had a conversation with Kaepernick, and basically, to give y'all context and just to sum up the conversation they had for him, it's on TMZ. They had a conversation that basically Travis told him what he was going to do. They didn't see eye to eye on it, but Travis was respectfully telling him that, yo, I'm going to still do this Super Bowl regardless of what you think. I don't think it was said like that. Obviously, I wasn't in on that conversation, but that's what the article stated, that, Colin wasn't too happy with it, and it just kind of is what it is. Travis just was being respectful and letting him know that's what he was going to do. So my dad came at me and he was like, well, Colin Kaepernick put out a thing that said either you with him or against him. And so that got me infuriated, because who was Colin Kaepernick to tell somebody else that they can't further their career by doing the Super Bowl? The Super Bowl is one of the most watched sporting events in sports. It's probably the most watched sporting event in sports in the U.S. So there's a lot of people who don't know about Travis's music. I'm a super fan of Travis's, so I know about his music, and I'm pretty hyped to go to listen to him do the halftime show. However, this is a great opportunity for Travis to further his brand, further his money, further his platform, further anything else that he tries to do. Travis was kind enough to have the money that he's going to make off the Super Bowl. He was kind enough to donate it to a charity that helps survivors of social injustice. It was $500,000 or $100,000, one of the two. But he was kind enough to get whatever he was going to make off that. He donated it already to one of those charities. So me personally, the question I want to ask to the listeners and the people, whoever listens to this, and again, as I said in my Good Morning podcast, if anyone wants to come and discuss something with me and discuss this with me, I am more than happy to do it. But who is Colin Kaepernick to tell people what they can and can't do with their careers because of a stance he took? Why is Travis being made to look like an Uncle Tom? Because he wants to further his career and he wants to put on a great show at the Super Bowl. Colin is not Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. But you guys have dubbed him that and have given him a title and clout such as that, where he feels like he can go around and do stuff like that. Gladys Knight had to put that young man in his place, saying that I've been fighting social activism before he was even born, which is a fact. Like, you don't tell people what they can and can't do with their careers. You know what I mean? And so that's my whole issue with Colin Kaepernick, is because after he kneeled and after he got his Nike bag, what is he doing now to help our community? Because from where I'm sitting and from what I'm looking at, he trying to just gain a bunch of clout and a bunch of money and monetize it and make a bunch of money off of it. But this is the same guy that you guys are ready to make the next Malcolm X and the next sports social activist. So again, as we come to a close, if anybody wants to come and discuss this with me, please do. But ask yourself, before y'all make Colin Kaepernick the next great black civil rights leader and he writes a book on him, and some kid in Atlanta or wherever writes a book report on Colin Kaepernick, ask yourself, does he deserve all of the clout and all of the respect that people before him has garnered? Has his struggle been as legitimized as those of Martin Luther King, Jim Brown, Malcolm X, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali? Is his struggle comparable to that? Did he have to go to jail because he didn't want to serve in the military? Was he sprayed with hoses of hot water? Was there threats and attempts on his life? He did get hate mail, and he did get hate letters. He did. I will say that. But his struggle is nowhere near the struggle that those before him had to take. And that's why Gladys Knight came up and said that. And I would like for anyone to tell me that Gladys Knight isn't qualified to tell Colin Kaepernick to chill out, that us as black people, we can't perform at the Super Bowl because you don't have a job. And furthermore, jobs that he turned down himself. So as I close this, I want you guys to, again, think about, what is Colin Kaepernick really trying to do? What is the point that he's really trying to portray to us? And is his social activism as legitimate as he claims it is? I thank you for listening to the Ham and Turkey. And please tune in next Monday for the next episode.